One of the things that I particularly love about having Angela Ahrendts as tonight's star interviewee is that Angela comes from a town called New Palestine, Indiana, which is barely over 2,000 people, still to this day. And she is now Senior Vice President of Retail for the most valuable company in the world, Apple. And there is a way to get from there to here. Welcome, Angela. So this is also very special because this is only Angela's, since Tim Cook came calling in 2014 when Angela was the CEO of Burberry. This is Angela's second on-stage interview since she took the job at Apple. And it's the first time she's going to be talking publicly about the new Apple store design. And we're going to even be talking about that concept of Apple stores, which you're completely rethinking. But let's start. I want to start in New Palestine, Indiana. And, you know, we have these fantastic 36 of you high school girls with us. And I'd like to know, first of all, Angela, what did you want to do when you were 16 years old?
It's a long time ago. But you know, it's funny. I grew up in a large family. So I'm one of 6 kids, and I have 4 sisters. And there's 6 of us in 7 years, so we're really, really close. And my dad used to joke they didn't have a TV, so it's like, but, and like you said, we're from this very small rural town, so sports were a huge part of our life. Team sports were a huge part of our life. You know, and in a very small neighborhood, community was a big part of our life. So, you know, it's funny back then, I loved to work. I always loved to work. I mean, I did every chore that was known to man, and I would log them all down so my mom would pay me the right amount at the end of the week. And I know it sounds odd, but so between sports and between...
And what sports did you play in high school?
Tennis, gymnastics, swimming, you name it. When you have 6 kids, you kind of put them in everything, and so that keeps them really busy and wears them out. So those were the 3, and then I played tennis at college for a couple of years.
And what was your first job?
Oh, and I played golf too. My first job was actually waiting tables.
Okay.
And
I know you worked at the Music Land in the Muncie Mall.
I did.
You did, and now you're head of Apple Retail, which is that's kind of amazing. Selling LPs too. So, Angela, you went from New Palestine, Indiana, to Ball State University. You got to, not filling in every dot in your career, but you became the head of Donna Karan International. And then you went to Liz Claiborne, and you were one of the top people there. And then in 2006, was it, that you went to Burberry and you became CEO of Burberry? And for those of you who are not familiar with what Angela did at Burberry, Angela, how would you describe the transformation, and it was a transformation of a 200-plus-year-old company, correct? That was pretty stodgy. And what did you set about to do there, and what did you do there?
In 3 minutes or less. You know, so I had met Christopher. We had hired him as Christopher Bailey was the chief. Well, he was actually the designer at Burberry when I started, and we knew each other because we had Donna had actually hired him right out of school. He won one of the contests in New York, and so he had come to work at Donna, so we knew each other. And we actually set out to, oddly enough, not just to be tops in luxury, I mean, I remember sitting and having a 3-hour lunch before I ever decided to do it, because packing up, at that point in time, 3 kids and 2 dogs and moving from New York City, where we'd been for 25 years, to London was a huge, huge decision. But Christopher and I sat there at lunch for 3 hours, and we decided at the end of the lunch that, I had never done it, he had never done it, and maybe together we could actually create the kind of company that we both always dreamed of working for. So it was company first, and I always said it was a business, a publicly traded business, and they happened to be in the business of fashion. And that was the lens we took, and we were in the people business.
So happened to be in the business of fashion, meaning that you wanted to create a new kind of lifestyle brand? Okay.
Yeah, an incredible company.
An incredible
where the best talent. And so we decided the strategy for the company over lunch that day before I ever started. We decided.
And what was that strategy?
That we absolutely wanted a retail-led growth strategy. 25% of their business was retail at that point, and we knew that that's what we had. That we knew we were going to target a younger customer, because none of the peers were, the millennials, if you will. We knew everything we did had to be British, because that was our differentiator compared to our big Italian and French counterparts. And we just literally sat there, and went line by line. And I think, most importantly, I trusted him, and he trusted me. And I think it goes back to the family and values, and that's always.
And you're leaving out one thing here. You made Burberry a digital leader in the luxury space, in the fashion space. Angela posed on the cover of Fortune when she was the CEO of Burberry. Little did she know then, when she posed with an iPad in her hand, where she would end up. Tim Cook ended up noticing that, but you gave iPads to all Burberry salespeople. Mm-hmm. And so Tim Cook comes calling in 2014. And had you ever met Steve Jobs? Had you ever met Tim Cook? Was this totally out of the blue? Tell us about this.
No, I had never had the honor of meeting Steve Jobs. I had followed him. I was a fangirl. And I, in interviews, would say that we turned the company around because of Apple, because of all that their technology enabled us to do all over the world. And when Tim called the first time, I told him, thank you very much. I'm incredibly honored, but I have the greatest job in the world, so, no thank you. Because I'm loyal, and if you come from where I come from, you always put people first. And I had an amazing team, and we were on an amazing run, and just acquired the beauty business back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I couldn't even fathom, leaving my kids who were now in university, but they were patient and persistent. So I tell my kids those are 2 great attributes to have.
So we did the first big on the record story about Angela last year in the Most Powerful Women issue. Jennifer Reingold, who is hosting tonight, did a wonderful story, interviewed Angela for the first time on the record, and you explained that that you told Tim Cook specifically, what did you say to him? I'm not a...
Oh. Well, the very first time we chatted, I was home for the holidays. I was living in London for almost 9 years, and so we were home to Indiana for the holidays, and I think they knew we were going to be home, and so they said, would you please fly out and meet Tim? And again, it was an honor to meet him. I mean, I, again, admired everything he was doing at Apple, so I did. But my mission was to talk him out of me, and so I said, don't believe everything you read. I am not a techie. I honestly asked my daughter, I'm absolutely not a techie. And he was so calm, and he just shook his head, and he said, I think we have 10,000 of those. I think we're covered there. And then I said, but you don't understand. I'm actually not even a great retailer. I said, we do so much more than that. And yes, we have retail stores. And he just very calmly, he said, last time I looked, we have the most productive stores in the world. So I think we've got some really good operators too. So it's like, oh, okay. So it seemed like, and at one point he said, he just looked at me and he said, you know you're supposed to be here.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because I watched your TED Talk, and trust me, you're supposed to be here. And that was, I think at any, you have a lot of crossroads in your life, and I think that people will say one thing that sticks with you, and that actually haunted me.
So it's interesting that you say that. I had no idea that I would be so prepared, but I have a key. I really didn't. I didn't know that Angela would even mention the TED Talk, but I knew that was meaningful, and I have a key line from your TED Talk. But before I read the key line, what was the essence of your TED Talk?
It was on energy, on human energy. Because I think as you get older and you lead big groups of people, you realize the gift, the power, that unity and clarity of vision, and most importantly, what I had discovered was, no different than my childhood, was that when you have this incredible foundation built on trust, that what it empowers and what it enables, and the hope and the belief, and trust just takes all the barriers away. And I think it's the same in a personal relationship, or in a small business, or in a huge business, and that's really what I had always focused on.
So Apple, though, Angela, has it's the most valuable company in the world. So something is working there in terms of the culture, but it has a controversial culture. It has a famously secretive culture. It is a hard place to work. And what could you bring in terms of the culture that wasn't already there?
And again, I speak on behalf of retail,
Okay.
which is about half of the company's employees, give or take 60 to 65,000 incredible people that you guys all face when you go into the stores around the world, and in the contact centers, that whatever you have a problem, if there's someone you need to call, they're always there for you. It's an amazing group with incredible tenure. I mean, incredible tenure. Typically, retail averages about a 20% retention rate. We average about an 87% retention rate in retail. I mean, the numbers are unheard of. So the culture in retail may or may not have been slightly different than the rest of the company. It's harder to speak because I'm not in the engineering departments or in the product departments, but the culture in the retail organization, and their mission or vision is not to sell you. Their whole values, if you will, is to enrich people's lives. Like, that's how they talk about it. And they're hired for those right brain or those prefrontal cortex values. They're hired for empathy and compassion, and very different than, and so that's, I think, when Tim heard the TED Talk and then he knew this retail culture, I think that's why he was.
So Angela said in this 2011 TED Talk called The Power of Human Energy, she said, the more technologically advanced our society becomes, the more we need to go back to the basic fundamentals of human communication. Okay. I agree. We agree. So what are you doing now? Let me back up. What did you think then about what the opportunity was in 2014 when Tim Cook was luring you? What did you tell him the opportunity was to increase the value of these most productive stores on earth?
Well, and again, he had one goal in mind. He had a retail store position open, and and it's hard, it's hard once you are running the entire thing to go that narrow, if you will. And so, and again, realize I'm trying to talk him out of it because I haven't really. So I, in one of the emails, I kind of proposed something that I thought might delay him a couple of months. So I sent a very nice, gracious, humble email, and I just, thank you so much, et cetera. And if you ever would consider the retail stores and integrating those with the online business, because that's the lens that I see the world through. At Burberry, we did everything digital first. So I said, if you ever wanted to integrate those and then wanted to make sure that they did something even greater, everywhere that they played a more important role in the community. If you really ever considered doing that, then of course I would have to consider. And Good. So about 5 minutes later, I get an email back. Well, I hadn't thought of it, but I love it. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I think it's when it does. I'm not young. I've been in business a long time, and I think that we were trying to do some really wonderful things at Burberry. We had the board agree to put 1% of the profits into the Burberry Foundation so we could help unlock creative thinking in kids. It was all around education and the arts that had been taken out of schools. And so all of a sudden, there's this incredible, the greatest platform in the world. And then it's not as much about a job. It's almost more of a calling. Because and you realize there's 500 of these incredible stores, places, if you will, all of these people that want to do and give more, and it's around enriching lives. So, okay, then how do you take that? And then it's,
And did you expect him? So basically, Angela is up for this job, and she's redefining the job to the CEO before she even accepts it. Did you expect him to accept your vision of the job?
No, I mean, no.
No. Well, good for you, and that is true power. And now tell us, Angela, seriously, it is. Good for you. So, Angela, how does that vision that you had in 2014 translate into what we are going to see now? Angela, just came back from London on Friday night. The Regent Street store, which is Apple's first store in Europe, got the redesign. And at this point, Union Square in New York, Regent Street, how many other stores have the new design?
By the end of the year, we'll be at 95.
95, but you're not really doing your big launch. And you actually described it to me. The launch will be at the point that the new stores sort of turn on the App Store, right?
Well, they turn on the service.
Explain that. Explain what you're doing.
So again, if in fact that, I'm at the stage in life where I think that companies have a huge obligation, and I think that the bigger the company, the bigger the obligation. And so our whole vision for the new store design concept was, what does the community need? How do we make it so that the best of Apple can come together in one place? You mentioned the App Store. Apple Music is huge. Apple Pay, health and fitness, HomeKit. It's the number one camera in the world times a multiple of like 10. So therefore, how do we help you become a better photographer? So we kind of mapped out everything people do on their devices and said, how do we make sure that we create an experience where the best of Apple comes together, one. But two, how do we make sure that the bigger that Apple gets, we put something there that's so wow, but also that is so incredibly locally relevant. And we said, how do we, you mentioned Steve, and Tim has followed on. Tim says that education is a pillar for the company. The company gives $100 million to Connect Ed, to the poorest schools in America, iPads, et cetera. I visited one in the Bronx when I was in New York a couple of weeks ago. And so that is a pillar. So therefore, what's our role in education? And maybe for students to teach them something they're not being taught in school. So one of the things we'll turn on next year as we turn on these stores is a Swift curriculum. We will teach kids to code 3 times a day, free of charge, whenever their parents can bring them in. So there's programming for children under the Educate. There is programming for parents. And there's programming for teachers. So we've just been piloting in Union Square something we call Teachers Tuesdays, where teachers are allowed to come in every Tuesday, and the team will do nothing but spend their time helping them. And last Tuesday, 78 teachers showed up from in and around San Francisco.
Fantastic.
So, thanks.
And musicians, photographers, are people in the arts. To what extent do you see this as a, kind of you're creating a gathering space for them?
Yeah, it's funny, we call it a town square. And I think, having 3 teens and you go to Washington Square Park in New York, or you go to Covent Garden or Union Square, and on the weekends you'll see an artist over here sketching something, or a guy playing a guitar over here, and kids love that, right? It's a human experience because they're so used to living in their digital worlds. And so our whole concept was, how does the store become more like a town square? Again, where the best of Apple comes together, everybody's invited, and it becomes almost a community hub.
Does this change the way you hire people for the stores?
It changes. We did actually change the structure to go along with the new store design. So we talk about the store being the biggest product that we produce now, and we launched 5 new features in that product. And the accessories now are called the avenues, because there's typically little shops that go around a town square. There's a huge high-res digital screen that we call the Forum, that you can seat 75 in front of. So the vision was, I love the street sign that Steve used to put up at keynotes, that Apple was the intersection between liberal arts and technology. It just always resonated, being a 50-50 right brain, left brain kind of person. And so our geniuses have been so revered for repairing your product. But how did we needed to counterbalance that liberal arts. So in order to now service music and gaming on the App Store, it's art and creativity, we've actually created a whole nother group, and those are called creatives. And we have a creative pro position that will now rival that genius position, but that creative pro will teach you how to be a better photographer. So, you come in, they will demo that product for you, sign you up for a photo walk, tell you when Visco is coming in to the Forum, to show what's new on their app. That creative pro that handles photography will do all they can, if that's your passion, to make you the best you can be at it.
Are you trying to, what do you think about the term store? Are you calling them that?
No.
What are you calling them?
It's Apple Union Square. It's Apple
Union
Regent
Square.
Street. It's Apple Keystone in Indianapolis.
Okay.
They're, again, the next generation they don't think of going
to the store.
No.
Angela, very quietly, a couple of weeks ago, like the press did not pick up on this, you changed your title from Senior Vice President of Apple Retail and Online to Apple Retail, which is a statement in itself. Angela, one more question, and this is a tip of our hats to the young girls out there. What would you tell your 16-year-old self, looking back, if you could, today?
Be your best self. Know who you are, know what you know, and know what you don't know. And, everybody has gifts that they've been given. And I think that it's so easy along the way to become incredibly insecure about everything you don't know, and I think along the way people will tell you too, and they'll try and convince you to become something that you're not. Early in my days, I had a man in human resources come up to me and tell me that, I was doing a good job, but, I really wasn't CEO material, and that I needed a coach. And I was young, and so I said, oh, okay. And, and I was supposed to be in Minneapolis for a week so they could teach me how to present better, I guess. And it was funny because the very first day, they did these videos, and then they played it back, and I liked it. I thought, oh, I liked it. I felt the energy. It felt really positive. And then they spent the next 5 hours critiquing every single thing I did. Don't move your hands. You talk too fast, And at the end of the day, I was supposed to be there all week long. I was so upset, and I just looked at them and I said, I like me. And this is who I am, and I don't care if I become a CEO. So.
And little did you know back then how important, in the age of social media, authenticity has become. So Angela is an authentic leader. Thank you for that. Thank you, Angela.